Okay, breaking news is Tyrrell Hatton has just signed with LIV Golf, and he looks to be joining Jon Rahm's team. But it's not necessarily all good news. I want to kind of take a bigger look at what this means for the league, what it means for the Ryder Cup, what it means for Jon Rahm's team, and what it means for the PGA Tour. But first, Mike, we got to break down this deal. Yep. So, we all had known, and this is not something that comes as a huge shock because it's been kind of so many months leading up to this that we've been hearing speculation about Hatton joining LIV Golf. But it really kind of makes me ask the question then, okay, what's changed?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because even coming out of Hatton's mouth, we had heard him saying, listen, I'm happy with my current status, bouncing between the DP World Tour and the PGA Tour. Also, as we've talked about here on the podcast numerous times, it's not a no-brainer for as many guys, depending on what their kind of status is in the World Golf Rankings and their exemptions into majors. Unlike Jon Rahm, whose team he'll be joining, he doesn't have that.
Yeah, I was going to say, where's his steady
blank? Yeah, he doesn't have that blank check, so to speak, into the majors for the next couple of years. So I would say arguably Hatton is taking a much bigger gamble
definitely
than Rahm or some of the other big signings have. And I would put Hatton under one of the big signing kind of category. So it makes you wonder, like, what's changed? And there's one big thing that we all know is the kind of the indicator here, and it's kind of what was the lever that kind of got a lot of guys over to LIV, and that's the money.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
So staggering amount of money once again. It's nowhere near the size of the Jon Rahm deal, understandably, but still, 50 million pounds was how much it looks like it's going to be confirmed that he signed for, which is just over $60 million. One thing we don't know at the moment is how long that term is going to be. Is that a 2-year deal? Is it a 3-year deal? Right. How that'll be broken out. But one thing we do know is he's on Jon Rahm's team. The two of them, we'll talk about the Ryder Cup in a second, the way they played together, that's just a starting point. These guys are going to make some money.
They're going to make money. They're going to win on that tour. $60 million, I think, is just a start for this guy. I think it probably was a no-brainer for him. I mean, I don't know where he's at in his career. I mean, I know he's on the later part than Rahm. He's been around a little bit longer. But again, without those exemptions into the majors, like without those Wyndham Clark guarantees that we were talking about, and even John's guarantees, or even Brian Harman's guarantees over the next 5 years, without those, it's a little more risky for this guy to go. But at the end of the day, $60 million plus what he's going to make on that tour, probably was a no-brainer for him.
And look, we've seen recent indications, even on the PGA Tour side, that we're going to see some sort of announcement as soon as within a month now of these tours coming together. I'm sure that eases the blow to some extent for these guys, that they realize there's going to be some vehicle for me to be in the majors. One thing I'll say is that Hatton is currently ranked 16th in the official World Golf Rankings. At that point, now let's say we theoretically froze his ability to make any points, now moving over to LIV and not playing any events. He was actually listed in the field for the Pebble Beach event as of this morning. So I imagine that's going to go away. But if you think about 16th, he can fall as far as 50th and still be in the majors, right? As long as he maintains that 50. So I would say, depending on how other guys play, you're probably looking at least a year, at least for 2024. He's probably set to still have his ticket to all 4 majors. That gets him at least that far. So depending on where the deal is. Now, we also know that there was a call between him and Jon Rahm recently that was also another catalyst that pushed this over the edge of getting him there. Who knows? Also, we've been saying, I've heard you say it multiple times on the show here, speculating. There's some stuff that maybe we don't know that the guys know. Is that World Golf Ranking points are coming? Is there something else? Do they have a little bit more of an inside track that they're hearing from the PIF of these negotiations of where they're at?
Yeah.
Maybe he's like, hey, listen, take the payday. We'll be getting our points soon, or we have a path to majors. Who knows?
Right. Worst case scenario, they never get points, and this contract runs to 2029 like Rahm's. Let's just speculate, right? Now here's a guy who's going to get $60 million plus over 5 years. If this tour continues to do what it's doing, and these guys are making the money they're making, and he's on Jon Rahm's team, he can make another $60 million. He can make 120 after it's all said and done.
There's no denying that he can make a huge payday. So a lot of it comes down to, and it's something we've said before, what's their motivation? Not every guy is motivated by money. There's going to be some guys who are going to be motivated by that guarantee that they want, that if they play well enough, they're in the majors, or that the Ryder Cup teams and all that type of stuff. I want to talk about that in a second because we're going to kind of talk about the guys who didn't go,
Right.
and what that really means. But there is still an indication here for me that not all is super rosy on the LIV side, because this is something that really came down to the wire. The LIV season kicks off this week in Mayakoba. We're talking about being 2-3 days away at this current moment, and it took this long to get Rahm. It took this long to get Hatton, leaving Jon Rahm really without a fully fleshed out team, and you're this close. Now, also, LIV is trying to build, a lot of that brand and name recognition. If you think about it, I understand the point of them being a startup, and not everything's going to happen overnight. But we're not even really allowing any time for some fandom to start getting on board with the Rahm team, because they don't even know who's on the team.
They don't. And I think it's next week. I think it's Super Bowl week. I think we got at least one more week. But still, it's only...
Well, Mayakoba's this week, so it's
this
up on
week.
February 2nd.
Mayakoba this week, then Vegas next week. Right.
Correct. So, we're talking days until...
Days before that one, yes.
Right. This is as 11th hour as it really gets.
Yeah, you're right.
So, and I want to dive into that more, and I really want to kind of look at it and see if we can give an overall scorecard of how well we feel like the offseason and the acquisitions that LIV did really panned out, because we heard a lot of hype. If you rewind just a couple of months, we heard a lot of hype going into that offseason of coming from Greg Norman, Phil Mickelson, just saying
Mickelson's
how
phone
you're
was
going
blowing up.
Right, you're going to be flush with these signings and people coming over. And let's debate, because it's only really been in the last week or two that you could say that they've got some traction. But prior to that, I didn't feel like there was a whole lot. But the thing we have to talk about, of course, is the Ryder Cup.
Yeah.
So
what's going to happen there, huh?
Yeah, because you know what this does? It puts a lot of pressure. And one thing I will say that LIV's deals have really done well is they've been really good pressure buttons for the powers that be.
Yeah.
By that, what I mean is signing Jon Rahm when they did, right before the framework, or first original framework agreement deadline, applied arguably a lot of pressure to the PGA Tour and a lot of leverage in their negotiations, right? Likewise, I feel like this is something that applies a lot of pressure to the DP World Tour and their approach to the Ryder Cup, because Rahm and Hatton were a dynamic duo on the European side.
Yep.
I think that if you looked fast forwarded to Bethpage Black in just 18 months or so from now, and if you saw a team that didn't have those two guys, I think the European side could be in some trouble.
I think so too, and I'm just looking at their roster here. I mean, Hatton was right there as one of their premier players. I mean, yes, they've got Fitzpatrick and Fleetwood and Hovland and McIlroy, but they lost Rahm, they lost Hatton. Those guys were two big names here. Justin Rose, Sepp Straka. I don't know if they're really doing that much damage anymore. And there's some names on here I don't even really recognize.
Right?
So did their team just get so much weaker? And will it be a clean sweep for the United States?
Right, and that's what just makes me wonder, does this apply the pressure to further get the deal done? Don't forget, involved in this deal is the DP World Tour.
Right.
And the DP World Tour, it's kind of... It can be confusing at times of how the Ryder Cup really works. It's kind of funny that on the American side, it's not the PGA Tour, it's the PGA of America, and that's why we haven't seen as many issues, because the PGA has allowed for LIV golfers.
Yeah.
The trouble was that they still weren't making the points other than in majors. So it's still not easy on the American side, but it's arguably a much harder route on the European Tour side for LIV golfers to make it to the team. So will this be not only a PR win, a visibility win for LIV by bringing number 16 in the world, Tyrrell Hatton, who's a big personality and all that type of stuff, but is it also a win in saying, hey, now the deal, here's the pressure, the deal's really got to get done, because otherwise you're looking at a Ryder Cup without these two marquee names?
I mean, can a Ryder Cup captain, especially on the European side, just pick anyone? If Rahm has an incredible year, can he just pick Jon Rahm?
It's a great question. Why couldn't you necessarily have them as a captain's pick? Well, what it comes down to, though, too, is how politicized this is. Remember, Stinson lost his captaincy when he went to LIV.
Right, and that was very early on.
Yes. So as that kind of stigma goes away, could it happen? Maybe. I don't know the exact ruling on that of whether they can or not, but effectively they'll be picking someone who doesn't have any points. I do believe, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, because I don't know the European side as well as I know the American side, but I think there's a stipulation that you have to play, I think, in at least 4 DP World Tour events.
Okay.
So that could be one part of that. Even as a captain's pick, maybe you cannot be picked if you haven't met that requirement. So there's no denying that this is going to put that pressure on the whole deal to get something done, to sustain, the attractiveness of the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, I know. And with that, what is that? That's in 2025. So there is time.
There's definitely time. But again, I think where LIV is smart is that they're making these acquisitions that continue to put the pressure that if you don't do a deal, effectively, the spectators are going to be the ones who are going to be losing out because they're not going to be able to see these players in things like the Ryder Cup and team events. That being said, I will also say that it's another way it's a smart move on the LIV side is because that does make for a very exciting team. I think everyone enjoyed watching Rahm and Hatton play together. There was very clear chemistry there between the two of them in the Ryder Cup. They're both very fiery personalities.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
And if LIV continues, golf but louder and wanting to live up to that mantle,
Hatton's perfect for that.
Hatton's the guy.
Yeah.
Hatton's the guy.
Yeah, no question.
And Hatton's also the guy who will speak his mind and do all those things. One thing that I think that for me was going to be very interesting to see was I always very much thought of Jon Rahm as a guy who speaks his mind and all that type of stuff. And we talked about this and we broke this down on another episode, but we said as soon as Jon Rahm went over to LIV, it seemed like a switch went off. And what was coming out of his mouth was a lot more sounding very PR, very just whatever. Will that happen with Hatton? Now, Hatton arguably does not have as many comments to walk back as Jon Rahm did. Jon Rahm had made some very strong comments, which we discussed here, about LIV and the format and the competition of it before going over, and then his comments once joining, growing the game, just talking about the formats just seemed like a complete 180. Hatton doesn't have that problem to walk that back, but on the same token, I'd be very interested to see if we hear a different Tyrrell Hatton in press interviews, or if we see
it'll
the
be
same.
Interesting to see.
I think keeping him who he is the best benefit to them if they can allow that to happen.
Right. Who knows what he's going to say when asked? He could fire off and be like, "Yeah, the PGA Tour stinks, and I don't want to be a part of it." Or he can have that PR.
But that would be a
script,
right? But that would be a huge walkback because here's a guy who had just said he was happy with his status playing on the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour. He's going to get the questions. And I want to hear one guy, and I hope Hatton's finally the one to do it, who just comes out and is honest and be like, it was the money.
It was the money. Yeah.
Keep this in mind. Tyrrell Hatton, over his career on the PGA Tour, now this is not sponsorship deals or anything like that, but just career tour earnings was about $22 million. He is effectively making 2 times the amount that he's made in his entire career in earnings on the PGA Tour in one day, in one big payday. So the money is still a major factor.
Yeah,
There's just no denying. So with that said, with the hype that went into the offseason of the signings that were expected, of Phil Mickelson talking about all the phone calls he was fielding from players who were ready and wanting to come over, from the fact that we are seeing that it's an open checkbook, seemingly unlimited funds that LIV can write whatever they want to bring people over with the backing of the PIF, it does make me wonder, how successful would you truly say that the offseason was for LIV in their signings? Because I would say prior to this past 7 days or so, other than with Jon Rahm, it wasn't the strongest turnout that I think a lot of us thought it was going to be. The Jon Rahm deal was major, but you take that Jon Rahm deal away and you start to have some concerns of really not a whole lot happened. So what I want to do is we're going to do a quick break here. We'll do a quick word from the sponsors. Then I want to come back and let's give a report card.
It's grading time.
Let's grade them and see how well did LIV do with their moves in the offseason.
Okay, I love it.
All right, look, it's no secret that everyone's trying to pick up more club head speed, and distance arguably now it's more paramount and more important in the game. If you're really trying to play well and score well and compete in tournaments, distance is really such a vital key, and that's why we're really excited that we've teamed up with the best speed training aid on the market, Ripstick. And Ripstick really is golf's ultimate training aid. You have 8 different weighting combinations all in one stick. And why that matters is it makes you easily be able to switch between your overspeed and underspeed training without any real complexity. And then to make it even easier, Ripstick has a free app for both iOS and Android. And I couldn't tell you guys, other than going through and using it for myself, I couldn't believe just how easy it was. It really legitimately walks you through that training step by step. And the best part about it, it's really not a huge time commitment. You know, if you're already working on your game, how hard is it to squeeze in 15 more minutes 3 times a week? It's really not that difficult. They even know how, so you kind of help prevent injury. I know that's another concern a lot of people have with speed training. They even work in right into the app, into your training, your rest days, and it'll actually lock you out of training and say, time to rest. But the idea is you can hit the ball further, hit the ball straighter, and really pick up some of those gains that either if you're chasing now, or maybe you're getting a little bit older and you're just looking to be able to hit those par 5s in 2 once again. Speed training with Ripstick is really the key to do it. Best part about it, you can get 20% off site-wise when you use our code Golficity. So give it a try. Start hitting some bombs today.
And the Hydro Series lineup of rain jackets from FootJoy, they're designed to protect players in everything from light mist to heavy downpours. I mean, we're faced with it all when we're out there on the course. So featuring DryJoy's waterproof technology, the Hydro Series provides the ultimate protection for every player, no matter the conditions or wherever you tee it up in the world. I mean, these lightweight designs, they make it easy to store in your golf bag, and you can pack it on any golf trip. I mean, although you may be going on a trip to Florida or somewhere south or somewhere in the warm weather, it doesn't matter because you can never always escape the rain and the wind. It's always going to find you somewhere. So I like to tuck one of these Hydro Series up, throw it in my bag. It's easy to pull out. It's lightweight. You throw it on and you're all set. But you got to check out the entire lineup of Hydro Series on their website at footjoy.com.
And guys, recently we got the unique opportunity to try the new 2024 Titleist AVX. And if you've listened to the show for a while, you know I've been a long time, kind of dabbling with the AVX. I played it for a long time, bouncing between that and the Pro V1 because I just absolutely love its soft feel. But for someone out there who's looking for a low-flying, low-spinning golf ball, you're really not going to get anything better than the AVX. And it has longer distance from tee to green, increased greenside spin and control, a softer feel, and that piercing flight. And it's really what gives the AVX its character. They've got a new proprietary urethane cover that increases that greenside spin. You get more short game control. That's where I love the AVX. It really shines for me, especially in that soft feel. But you've also got the upgraded thin high flex casting layer, which gives you low spin on those long game shots. So from tee to green, it's an incredible performer. If you're someone who does enjoy a softer feeling golf ball, or if you're looking for a little bit lower flying ball, lowering your trajectory a bit, lower spin, especially on those long game shots, the AVX is one to give a definite look this season. Pick it up. It does have available in white. They also have that high optic yellow, which I like, especially in those kind of transitional seasons in the spring and the fall when it's a little bit harder to find your ball. But go and check it out. Pick up a sleeve. Give them a try for yourself. And if you get the opportunity to go and do a full ball fitting this year, definitely do it. The AVX is going to be in there, and you're going to be able to give it a look under the guidance of a well-trained fitter. So go to Titleist.com to learn more about the Titleist AVX. All right, so if we're to kind of take a look at this, and again, trying to give a scorecard, because now I would say this is the end of the LIV off season with Mayakoba just a few days away. Now, that's not to say that there might not be some more signings throughout the year, right? But I feel more or less like kind of where you're going to go is where you're going to go at this point. And it's kind of settled in of who's going to be with LIV and who's going to be with the PGA Tour for at least another kind of full season here. So going back to it again, we heard so much coming from, and how much with this, always trying to sort out how much of this is hype, how much of this is reality. And you heard Phil Mickelson back towards September-ish, was as the season was winding down, was saying, his phone had been so busy, so many people calling and basically inquiring, and these are talking about players who are interested in making that jump over to LIV. It doesn't come as a huge surprise to me,
right?
Especially because of the fact that as we got closer and closer to seeing a deal happen, and that stigma kind of went away of jumping over to LIV in that way, and the PGA Tour validating it in a lot of ways by saying there was going to be a deal. It didn't surprise me too much, and I kind of felt like, maybe we would see some big signings. And you saw Greg Norman coming out and saying the same thing. There was going to be some big signings. And there's no doubt Jon Rahm was the biggest of that. And Jon Rahm, we talked about it here on the show, was a huge it turned the corner for a lot of people. We saw that was when we first saw Rory McIlroy make his kind of 180 in his rhetoric of what he was saying about LIV. That was a head turner. But other than that, I would say, and give me a second because it's coming up to this week with Hatton and stuff in this like 11th hour editions. But prior to that, if you looked at the offseason holistically, I would say that there was not a whole lot of other household names making the move. Now, take with a grain of salt. I fully well understand that, we're here in the United States. We watch most of our golf here. There may be some of these guys that we talk about that are household names, more internationally, European Tour and otherwise. So as we see the LIV Golf Tour shape up to be more of an international tour, you can make the argument, depending on where you sit, that it might be more household names. But I look at some of the moves over to LIV. So you had like Kazuma, you had Andy Ogletree, you had another one, Kieran Vincent. So they're names that are kind of like on that fringe of maybe dipping and starting to get into the household names, but not yet quite all the way there.
Yeah.
Right? So if I looked at this and we were sitting here talking 10 days ago, I would say LIV only made one big signing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would, if we were report card grading it, I think once they sign Rahm, I feel like they got an A. LIV, right there. They could have ended it right there with an A. Great offseason. You picked up arguably one of the best players in the world, top 3. You're good. Great. Move on, 2024, move on to 2025, right? But then they brought a couple of these other guys on. And Adrian Meronk, DP World Tour Player of the Year. This is the guy, if you don't know, he's the guy who was snubbed, didn't make the European Ryder Cup when a lot of people felt that he should have, especially with winning those honors. So I think he's headed over there. And then you go down the list of Caleb Surratt, who is that sophomore at Tennessee or Texas. I forgot which school he's at, but he's in college. So yeah, I would bring their total report card grading probably down to a B- for 2023 going into 2024 if I had to grade it. The question is what would get that back up to an A? Like, who's left on the table?
Right. Well, and that's where I was sitting in a similar position where I would say a week or so ago, I would have said, hey, this report card is a C because the only big name you picked up was Rahm.
Yeah. So
without Rahm, it's an F. You
Yeah.
You didn't turn my head at all. Rahm was the big head turner. I would say, though, it's been very 11th hour, but what has undoubtedly bumped that up for me in looking at LIV's overall performance and their moves in this offseason has been, of course, the addition of Adrian Meronk. That was a big one just earlier this week. But the bigger one is definitely this Tyrrell Hatton.
Yeah, right.
There's no denying it. But it leaves me wondering, do you guys feel, and leave this in the comments, do you feel like that was enough to truly move the needle? And when I say that, I mean, LIV had, if you look at it and you look at the number of names who had the opportunity to go, here, LIV was sitting in a very good position going into this offseason. And by that, I mean, they had a deal potentially there on the table, which even from the PGA Tour side, you're hearing it from the memos that are coming out, everything like that, saying it's going to happen, right? So you look at it and you say, these tours are coming together anyway, right? I can sign and make big money, a big payday. It's become more valid with guys like Rahm moving over and guys like Rory and these guys now more so saying they understand why guys went over. So if you piece all that together, I'm actually a bit surprised we didn't see more names make the jump,
right?
Which is what makes me wonder, what is still ultimately holding them back? What is holding them back? And does the PGA Tour still hold more of the cards than a lot of us think? I think, and I look to, for an example, where money is not necessarily everything. I look to Nick Dunlap, and I'm thinking from a PR move, from an investing in the future move, all those types of things, I would be beyond shocked if after his big breakout PGA Tour win, there wasn't anywhere from $20 to $50 million deal sitting on his agent's desk the next morning from LIV.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And here's a guy who he's going to make, we talked about this before, he's going to make a lot of money no matter where he lands, because now he's got his ticket punched to the majors, he's into the, what do you call it? The signature events. He's in those fields. So he's going to make his money. But you think about a guy like Nick Dunlap, who I would say arguably out of the amateur ranks probably seemingly had the most potential. Definitely. Out of anyone. And in that way could kind of negotiate his future. Here's a guy who, maybe playing in the majors was the most important thing. If he had made the jump, he's not quite in. He jumped way up in the official world golf rankings. Yeah, no doubt. 56. But he's not in the, you know what I mean? Other than his exemptions from his PGA Tour win. Yeah. That could have been in question. So I would say I would rank the overall on maybe a B+. The ROM is what's the linchpin that's holding that together. And I think these 11th hour signings of Tyrrell Hatton being, I would say the only, out of this whole thing, would you agree that probably the only two household names, internationally wide household names, are ROM and Hatton? I agree. So I would say you ultimately, for as much hype and all that there was, they came out with only two. I kind of say only because ROM is such a big name, but only two household name signings out of all of that. Yeah. Is that not as big a success as maybe they would have liked?
I guess we're gonna see. We're gonna see what ratings come out with. Like, are people that intrigued to see this Rahm Hatton combo? Is that gonna be the piece that gets people to start tuning in to LIV? I honestly feel like an Anthony Kim with this recent news might be even more, feed more curiosity to people who've been speculating that for years. Is this guy gonna come back? Now, if he comes back and signs with LIV, maybe they'll tune in to see how he's played after 10 years because of that big story. It's interesting because, I think about all this money and everything they're throwing at guys like Hatton, $60 million. It makes me sit back and think, if Hatton signed for $60 million, just how much do you think a Justin Thomas turned down, a Ricky Fowler turned down? 9 figures easily these guys turned down. And I wonder if those offers are still on the table or they're still pursuing them. Just makes you think. And I'm not knocking Tyrrell Hatton. He's a phenomenal player. He's accomplished a lot. He's had a great career. But he's no Spieth. He's no Scheffler. It's just interesting.
And I think that's what it comes down to. Is like I said, I got to look at both sides of the coin. It's easy to look at this and say, wow, another big name over to LIV. But it's also, again, if you say you've got those deep pockets and all the reasons why they say, quote unquote, so many players want to come over to LIV, and in the end, this offseason, they pulled out one top 10 guy, and they got one guy in the top 20.
Yeah, I don't think it was overall a good offseason for them.
Where a lot of us, we're kind of thinking, like, the way the rhetoric was going on the LIV side, we might see 3 top 10 guys make the jump. Yeah. So it's a hard thing to kind of quantify, and I think it's a lot whether you're a kind of a LIV glass half full or LIV glass half empty person. And that's what I want to hear from you guys in the comments. But it does, them pulling one top 10 guy and one top 20 guy, is that a successful offseason moves? Do you believe on the LIV side, or would you have liked to have seen more? And is that a win on the other side? Is it a I mean, it's funny we're talking about it in wins and losses, like these two are still head to head. Meanwhile, the PGA Tour and LIV are trying to come together.
They're trying to, yeah.
Which is just, again, reason why I think something needs to happen to bring the heat down on all of this. But the PGA Tour could be looking on the other side and being like, hey, LIV, with your unlimited budget, you only took 2 guys out of the top 20 in the official world golf rankings away from us.
Right.
And Guys like Nick Dunlop, the kind of the future of the game, are over here.
Yeah, you're making me want to, regrade my score, my report card. That's why I'm not a teacher. I would just give people good grades, I guess. Now the grade is starting to get a lot less the way when you put it like that.
No, but I still think it is. We can't take away from it. It's a significant move.
No doubt.
I think Hatton and Rahm will be a phenomenal team
Big time.
together. I think they're the ones that bring that scorecard up in that B range.
Yeah.
But I think just because of what we heard from Norman, from Mickelson, about how many guys really wanted to come over, when you really come down to brass tacks and you're like, you got one top 20 guy, one top 10 guy, and one top 20 guy. Is that enough?
I don't know. And I'm curious to see who else will go, because we could see mid-season signings. There are still people out there that are still probably in talks. And I will say this, because I've been so quick to say this on this show. Anytime we talk about the upfront bonuses, like I would say the words, yeah, that's a no-brainer. I would take the money. Where I agree on the opposite side of that is what Nick Dunlap did do. I think he made the right choice.
I do.
I think staying on the tour that he's been grown up to play and compete in all his life, won it, first amateur since Phil Mickelson, made the headlines throughout the PGA Tour all week that week as like the hottest guy, #1 amateur in the world, and now he's in all these events for this year.
Yep.
If I'm his agent, I'd be like, dude, you're staying on the PGA Tour, and you're going to try this thing, and we're going to be the next Scotty Scheffler.
Yep.
So...
And yeah, the official World Golf ranking, him wanting to jump up that rank, like if he jumps over
majors.
to LIV, he takes the big payday, but then he kind of freezes himself there.
Right.
Don't forget I'm certain there's a lot of guys who are on this kind of fence that like they're just not going to pull the trigger so long as the two leagues stay separate. Mm-hmm. But who knows? And this is something we're going to keep watching closely, and we're going to keep reporting on here when we get a real deal. And when we really find out what are the terms of those deals, does it open up for players to play on the DP World Tour one day, LIV Golf guys on their off weeks? Remember, their schedule is not as packed as the PGA Tour and stuff like that. If there's a potential for them to play in their off weeks on DP World Tour events, PGA events, man, that's when we could really see the next wave of guys making the jump.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that, because I think there's a lot of guys who would love nothing more than to play 12 or whatever it's up to LIV events, and any other week they hand pick whether they want to play a signature event, or if they're a European guy, they play a DP World Tour event, lock in their Ryder Cup status, and now they're living the best of both worlds.
But nobody else can go and just play on a LIV event.
That's right.
That's, I think, the biggest problem. Like, oh, sure, they can go play over here and get points, but we can't go over there and try to play for $4 million of team winnings one week because I'm not on a team.
That's where I think, let's take, for example, a guy like Victor Hovland, right? The benefit for him, if these two leagues were truly that came together, get over on LIV, play your 12, 14
like
events.
Is a sub in for the week? Oh,
no,
play them all.
LIV, right? Be there, and then in between those weeks, play a couple of signature events on the PGA Tour, assuming you've got the exemption to do it. Play your majors, play like just instead of like, it's almost the opposite of some guys saying they wanted less schedule.
Right.
There might be some young guys who are in their prime and playing really well, and then just be like, let me blow it out of the water. I'll play every LIV event, and I'll play 3 DP World Tour events or 4 to get my Ryder Cup status, a couple signature events in the majors. I'll have a 22 event season this year, and I'll make generational wealth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who knows? It remains to be seen. But drop your report cards in the comments and let us know. Now that we've seen, the moves, they've been made, I think this is kind of where it's going to settle. Where do you grade LIV's off-season acquisitions on the whole? Where do you grade that? Let us know. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you in the next one.